One meeting
So far.
That's what I read yesterday.
we have one this time.
There was one last time. We couldn't-
There's something.
Huh?
Just face the music.
My person said she got two.
We should have had.
I don't. What did you say?
I would have thought of it.
Something said.
Oh, I don't know. That was Jeff that said that.
Oh, did you see about two?
That was in,
It's still on here. But yeah, you'll have.
Yeah, because that's the only thing I got.
So this, I mean, and they specifically talk about less than 10,000.
But if you look at the bottom one, it's some exceptions to is considered.
School year supposed to plan to provide full and participation for all. During
And I did.
yeah, you've been right.
I didn't see it breaking.
Got a bunch of them. Most people think they're crows, but they're actually ravens.
Oh, gotcha.
They're the giant crows are ravens.
We're pros.
Yeah, they have
Or, yeah.
yellow
No.
beak and claws.
Oh, okay.
That's
Yeah,
the easiest way to tell.
There's
Good
one.
point. No,
Mhm.
thanks. I'll be watching.
Most of them that we have around here are actually ravens.
Is this a gift for me?
Yeah, when they're on the ground,
Oh, they
it gets trapped in my own aviator because it ate my goose and couldn't get out. They stand. They're big birds.
Scary.
My family wanted to kill it. I was like, it's doing its natural thing. Like, it got in. And we didn't predate it. It was a coyote, and I knew it was going to come back and get more. I'd be more worried. This is something that just opportunistic. It'll go off now. Probably won't come back here after being scared and trapped in the aviator. As of yesterday, I got accepted to Seattle U Law.
He's like,
Are you gonna fit that in your schedule?
I don't know. Well, I did take a new job.
Did you?
What did you?
Same practice, but it's Monday through Thursday. It's 4:10s. I get done before 4:30, so
Really? It's a different
Okay, I
position in the
can't find it,
same.
but I
same
read it.
practice. I wanted to change, and I needed to make it so I could go to
As
hospital.
we go with that.
No.
I mean, it's gray area.
Good for you.
lateral spouse.
That should help a lot. I don't know what to say.
$10,000 scholarship,
Yeah,
plus a
we have
3,000
0 for the 6 o'clock.
plus my GI Bill. It still only cost me 14 a year.
Well, thank goodness you bought that other stuff.
Yeah, it's got that
Glad I have it.
half an hour ago.
Really couldn't afford the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Well,
don't
you
know.
need to read it.
They pay for their whole life.
Is that
I
what it
didn't
is?
go for it. You didn't have $250,000 in debt.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like.
It's what happens.
And the quarter's not bad, because you have undergrad before you can go to that. Yeah.
That's right.
You don't have to.
Let's do that. Okay, everybody's here? Okay, so it is 18:05, 6:05. Let's call this meeting to order. Everybody please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kim, it's all yours.
Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present the proposed budget for the 2021-2022 school year. This is a process that we actually started last December and has continued throughout the spring as enrollment numbers continue to move all over the place, and as we evaluated the needs of our students going into next year. So because of the uncertainty facing the district going into this current school year, we based our original budget on a flat enrollment from the previous year. We just didn't know where we were going to end up. And it turned out that we took a significant drop over the year. So we lost 144 students overall, and that was a 7.4% loss in revenue for this current school year. Keeping in mind that that 7% does not include the loss of transportation funding or any of the ancillary programs. That was just our basic education. And of course, that continues to translate into next year. So we are still facing the questions of, are our parents going to continue to homeschool? Will they opt for some virtual learning? We had a very small kindergarten class last year. We are extremely curious to see how many are going to come back for next year and what the needs of those kinders will be. So with all that in mind, we decided that in budgeting for 21-22, we would take the approach of a gradual return of our students over the next 4 years to our pre-pandemic enrollment levels. So for 2021, our total FTE was 1799, and for 21-22, you can see that we have a slight increase. Our overall enrollment is predicted at 1861. And it is going to take the next 4 years, according to this model, before we return to that high water mark that we were at going into the pandemic. So in building the budget, we really looked at 3 scenarios. We looked at the worst case scenario, which would be that the enrollment we have this year, that's our survival rate for our cohorts. And we were looking at declining enrollment for the next 4 years. And then we had our best case scenario, which is that everybody comes back next fall and we're ready to rock and roll. And then we had a middle ground hybrid, which was just basically an average of the low. And if we use the low, but with our cohort survival rate that we had in place going into the year. And it has been a mixed bag of results since we decided to go that middle ground route. Weyerhaeuser has already surpassed that middle ground projection. Columbia Crest is still at kind of the worst case scenario right now. And Eatonville L is kind of in between the two, but we know that they are kind of notorious for getting that late surge of enrollment really close to the start of the school year. And so really, the bottom line is that we probably will not know where we're going to end up until that first week of school. Special education enrollment saw very modest drops this year. We had some students that transitioned out of needing service. We had a few students that opted to go to Grad Alliance and a couple that moved out of district. But we do have a large group of preschoolers from this year that are poised to roll into that kindergarten class. And so it really became a discussion of how do we best support those students going into next year. And so to give our students and our staff the best support possible, we are moving this self-contained classroom to Eatonville Elementary for next year.
Kim, where is it currently housed?
We actually have divided classrooms. We have one at Eatonville L and one at Weyerhaeuser, and so those 2 teachers are going to team teach so that they can really expand the horizons of our students. So revenues, because enrollment is sort of a guessing game, revenues as well are in flux. What you can see, if you look at 2019 and the state general revenue, that is our apportionment, that is our enrollment-driven revenue. And we were at $17.8 million. For this year, we are projected to come in at 16.4. And that does include some of the hold harmless money that came through. So for next year, we'll be actually just a little bit lower than this year because there is no hold harmless for next year. We will not be back at our 1920 apportionment. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that our levy revenues will be higher because, as we know, we are now allowed to collect that $2.50. However, with the loss in the apportionment and some of the other state special purposes, which includes our LAP funding, which is also enrollment and poverty driven, we really do not come out with a large excess for next year. If you look at the very bottom row, other revenues, that is our capacity, our contingency. Think of it as we have been pre-authorized for a mortgage. Obviously, we're hoping that we can find a house that doesn't take all of that. But if we do, we're allowed to spend. There is a revenue capacity that matches an expenditure capacity. What we're hoping is that our enrollment does get that big surge in the fall, and we do get more in apportionment, that we are therefore allowed to spend that on our students instead of having to wait for a budget extension or another year to spend. So our expenditures are broken down into some account codes, and there are some different categories. So you can break it down by what program you're spending it on, what activity you're spending, or the object. So your objects are your salaries, your benefits, and then what we call MSOCs, which are our materials, supplies, and operating costs. We are looking at almost $1 million increase in certificated salaries for next year. We have added several staff members. We have been able to add speech language pathologists, which we've never had in district before. We've been able to add a mental health counselor district-wide. We've been able to add a certified occupational therapy assistant, which we've never had in district before. So that does account for some of the higher salaries. There is an offset decrease then in purchase services because we no longer have those contracts. However, purchase services have not gone down as much as you might anticipate, mainly due to a large increase in our insurance costs. We have a 25% increase in insuring the district for next year, equates to roughly $80,000. So that if you look at expenditures by activity, what you're looking at is what do we spend on instruction? What do we spend on serving meals to our students? What are we spending on to and from transportation? That transportation number that you see there does not include field trips. It does not include our extracurricular runs, taking our kids to their meets. This is strictly to and from school transportation. I do not anticipate that, I don't believe that the district support is going to come in quite that high. I am hoping actually that our public activity expenditures come in higher because what we have in public activities is our pool. And we've been closed for a year. We're finally up and running again. Andrea had some really wonderful programs in place before the closure. And so I'm hoping that as she gets things rolling, you're going to see a need for more lifeguards, for more swim instructors, and that's just good for our community. So our fund balance trend. I want to thank the board for last spring setting aside money in a contingency fund, which meant that if our state funding came in lower, that we had those funds earmarked to keep programs going, to be able to continue what was in place. We are going to expend a portion of those funds this year. We are going to expend a portion of those funds next year as well. I expect in year 3, as enrollment starts to really get closer to our pre-pandemic levels, that the fund balance will level out. By year 4, then we're on a slight upward trend again. But for the most part, we are in a very stable situation with our fund balance. We are not going to take a large dip. We are not going to expend the entirety, I don't believe, of that contingency, but knowing that it is there meant that we are not in the same position as a lot of school districts this spring. We did not RIF. Right now, we are looking at potentially ending this year with 4.1 million in our fund balance. With 29 million coming in revenues, roughly 30 million in expenditures. Keep in mind, both of those numbers include our 2 million capacity. We expect to end the year at 3.8 million, which is roughly 13%. This is the first year we've had a 2 million capacity instead of a $1 million capacity. The reason for that is that I did not budget for the full expenditure of ESSER funds. But as the year gets underway, if Mr. Neal and you, the board, decide that there's a need for some instant interventions, now you have the capacity to expend those funds and put things in place quickly. In terms of where the money will be at the end of the year, we will always have a little bit of carryover from our grants, from donations, a little bit on our categorical programs. CTE usually carries over just a little bit, title carries over a little bit. The assigned to the contingency, those were the funds that you authorized to have set aside. Assigned to other purposes is the commitment you made to the middle school staffing to stabilize that over the next couple of years. It also includes all of our commitment to the teacher's idea fund that is stipulated in the collective bargaining agreement. And then we have the unassigned to minimum fund balance policy. Our policy is to have 10 to 15% in the bank. That unassigned GL will come in somewhere between 4 and 5%. But overall, you are still meeting your minimum fund balance policy. We are required by law to have this lovely slide that stipulates how much we are going to spend on supplies. Apparently, there is someone out there that believes that they are giving us too much money for supplies, and we then have to show that we're actually spending what they gave us. As you can see, we overspend what the state funds by almost $700,000. There is a large increase in the purchase services for Grad Alliance, which is your program 03, Dropout Recovery. Right now, we are budgeted for 35 students in that program come fall. And I would like to point out that the purchase services in your ALE, program 02, that is mainly our Spokane Virtual Academy Association that we have for our students, as well as Edgeunity. So as you know, when they passed McCleary, we are now required to put in a 4-year outlook budget along with our yearly annual budget. It was a mystery game at best going into this year, and now we are all asking for our magic 8-ball. So what you see on the top line, again, is that gradual return of our enrollment over the next 4 years and what that means in terms of our revenues. Projected expenses, there are very modest increases budgeted in for salary increases, step increases, and inflation. The projected fund balance will go down to a low in 23-24, but again, in a very stable position, and then just a tiny increase and bounce back up in the final year. Our capital funds project. Thankful to have a community that was willing to support us as McCleary came out and really give us some options, both for technology and for building. Last year, I would say 90% of this did go to technology. The fact that we were able to make that happen last spring has been something for which we are extremely grateful. The revenues that we collect then are from our levy. They're from interest that we get on investing those funds until they're needed. And in the past year, we have been very pleased to start receiving impact fees once again from Pierce County. That has been a wonderful surprise, and it is allowing us to make some classrooms out of former technology rooms so that we can spread out again next fall. And it's allowing us to put some much needed ADA facilities in for our preschool rooms. We did not anticipate impact fees when we did last year's budget, so we are going to end this year with a substantial amount still sitting in that fund balance. So a little over $300,000. We have budgeted to expend most, but not all of that next year. The reason for that is that impact fees can only be used to expand instructional space. We can't use it for anything else. So until we have such a time where we have enough saved up that we can actually perhaps have a portable, do some remodeling, that money will continue to roll over. So what you see in expenditures then is mostly the levy collections.
Can we ask a question?
Yes,
Do those funds have an expiration date? Do we have to use them by a certain?
they do. I'm going to defer to Krista.
That's 10 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we will still end the year with $300,000 in that fund.
Kim, before you move to the debt service fund, can you go back to the tech levy or the capital project?
It's a little slow. There we go.
Thank you. You are familiar with the ECF. It's the Emergency Connectivity Fund that for the
Yes.
cities, which is $7.1 billion. With that in mind, have we thought about how we're going to take advantage of that opportunity?
It is something which
That
Drew and Tyler and I have spoken of, and Krista has also been a part of those conversations. We did not have as many families as we thought that were in need of those connectivity pieces. We still have the hotspots left over from this year, and we are working with those families as far as who still has a need for next year. We thought perhaps we could use them on devices, but it doesn't look like we can. The latest that came out from E-rate said no. So we probably are not going to have a huge influx from that particular bill.
So the current lease that we have, from what I'm understanding, is that you can actually use this funding for prior purchases or lease. Is that something that we're thinking about to?
So our student Chromebooks, we've actually purchased outright. We are not leasing any student
Oh, all right,
Chromebooks.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So debt service fund is only used to pay the principal and interest on our voted bonds. We do not have any non-voted debt. Our collections are levy collections. We do receive money from the state in the form of a timber excise tax, and again, the investment interest. You'll notice that we are dropping just a little bit in our fund balance each year. We try to be very careful not to collect excess in what we need, and to leave as much as we can in our community. So principal and interest for this upcoming year is $2.3 million. We'll be collecting $2.3 million. We do have a little bit then that we have in bonds fees that we have to expend, and we'll end the year with a little over $900,000. The Transportation Vehicle Fund is funded fully on the state depreciation schedule. We do not have a transportation vehicle levy out there. And it garners a very minuscule amount of investment earnings. It can only be used for the purchase of yellow buses. We cannot buy motor pool vehicles through the Transportation Vehicle Fund. We cannot fund staffing through the Transportation Vehicle Fund. Because of everything else that Portland had to deal with this year, he has put off purchasing any buses until the next year. So that's why you see such a large carryover going into next year. But he is looking at purchasing at least 2 buses in the fall. The Associated Student Body Fund. Revenues come from clubs, dues, fundraisers, gate tickets from athletics. They too get a little bit of investment earnings. It has to be spent on activities that are cultural, athletic, recreational, or social. It cannot be used as gifts to individuals. It cannot be used to supplement materials for regular instruction. So it has to be outside of instruction. Ideally, we don't like to see them carry over a lot. They didn't have a lot of opportunities this year to do much with it. On top of that, they are dealing with the ramifications still of House Bill 1660. And we expect then that their revenues are going to go down next year and in the future, and they're still grappling with how to deal with that and make things happen. And then we just have an ending fund balance by school. Obviously, the high school has the largest chunk of the fund balance at 171,000. The middle school has had a very solid 4 years in terms of their planning. They're ending at 27,000, and Columbia Crest is adding at 9,600. Again, they have done a really wonderful job of adding in the midst of all the uncertainty. Are there any questions? Yes.
Where's Eatonville Allen Warehouser?
They do not have P,
Oh,
ASD,
these are
they only
ASD,
have
okay,
PT
right.
and booster
Sorry,
clubs.
missed the ASD piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
We can.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much.
Okay, nobody has signed up to speak, so unless anybody has any more comments, we'll go ahead and adjourn our budget meeting. Yeah, anything? Okay, then we'll show adjourned at 6:27. We'll be back at 7 for the regular meeting.
7 o'clock for next one.
Yeah. side. Then no, because I don't want this to take, it's not, it's here to answer our question. That's a good lesson. Everybody set?
We're ready.
Okay? Yeah. Well, we just pledge allegiance. So. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to call this meeting to order. Would everybody rise for the flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. So any changes or additions to the agenda? All right, seeing and hearing none, I would consider a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, consent agenda is passed. Let's go to Kim for enrollment report, please.
First, I would just like to take a moment and thank you very much for the opportunities and the trust that we've had over the last 4 years. It has been a pleasure. And I would humbly request that you pass the proposed 21-22 budget.
Just a second. People, hey, if you're going to come in late, would you please be quiet, please, while we're doing our business? Thank you. Please grab a seat. Go ahead, Kim.
So with that, I do humbly request that you pass the proposed budget for the 21-22 school year.
Good. Thank you, Kim. So we're going all the way down to new business then.
Under 5.
Yep. Okay, so we consider a motion for the approval of curriculum adoption for the 21-22 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I would like to say that I had the opportunity to sit in the curriculum meeting where we went over financial literacy. I felt like it was a good representation for our community. I'm very grateful for our committee and to Ms. Hearsing for really running and facilitating that. I was really impressed by the openness that we had and the opportunity for the community to be a part of that voice, and knowing that we will continue with that tradition and making sure that all of our curriculum is always given the opportunity to have the public eye, as well as input from community and from that committee that was there. So thank you, Mrs. Hearsing, and thank you to members of the committee that participated.
Jeff, I also want to thank Kim for the work that she's done to get this budget prepared for next school year. We couldn't have done it without your expertise and your knowledge of our budget here. So my sincere thank you for all the help.
Awesome. Okay, any other comments? Okay, then all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, approved. Consider approval of resolution 726 to adopt the budget for 21-22 school year.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
I just want to say thank you, Kim, and your staff for all the hard work that you put into this and for making.
What's that? Sign-up sheet's already closed.
None of us were able to come in until 7, and then it was gone.
Everybody was welcome in the foyer, but well, what's your name?
Cole Stover?
Cole Stover?
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
know there's probably a few others that'd like to as well.
You want me just to go close to the back for an extra 5 minutes?
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
Anyway, I just want to thank you and your staff for the wonderful work that they've done, the hard work in the last couple of years. It's been amazing, and we just can't. We are so blessed to have you, and we will miss you, but we wish you well, and we've gained so much by your being here.
Okay, any further discussion?
Thank you, Kim, for taking the time to do the community review that we had at 6 o'clock. We really appreciate it. It was very thorough, and
I'll wait till my speech then.
we wish you best as you move forward.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, consider approval of resolution 727 for basically making Gary our signer.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing and hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, motion passes. Gary is our signer. Okay, Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Let me find my folder.
Can you hear me okay?
We got you. Okay, Gary, you stand up. Perfect. There we go. All right, well, raise your right hand and repeat after me, Gary. I, Gary Neal,
I, Gary Neal,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington,
and will faithfully perform the duties
and will faithfully perform the duties
of the superintendent, secretary to the board
of the superintendent, secretary to the board
of the Eatonville School District,
of the Eatonville School District,
located in Pierce and Lewis counties,
located in Pierce and Lewis counties,
state of Washington,
state of Washington,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
All right, very good. Congratulations, Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
We'll see you at work in the morning. No, we got it. Yeah, we got it. Okay, so reports and presentations. We have presenter now from risk management. The floor is yours, sir.
Somebody right here,
Please.
Please.
just amplify.
Can't.
I can talk loud, I'm a lawyer, that's all right. So I'm not actually from risk management. I'm an attorney actually for the Eatonville School District, who is one of the attorneys that works for the Washington Schools Risk Management Pool, just so all of you have an idea of who I am. And one of the things that I've been helping school districts in the state of Washington do since basically March of last year, when all our lives changed, is help them navigate essentially what it's been like to try and operate and continue to exist over the course of that time to the present time, and help them also try and navigate the future as well. And we've been trying to deliver, I think, instruction, the districts have, I've been trying to help them in an imperfect world as best they have, as all of us have been trying to navigate it. And in particular, my understanding is, and I've delivered some things that are privileged to the district to kind of explain or talk about the mask mandate, I guess, is kind of the primary purpose, but I can certainly focus my remarks if the board has any particular area they would like me to address or start with. Or I can just do my spiel. Okay.
Feels always good.
I'll turn because we have a very large audience here, also speak to you. The school district is subject to the laws of the state of Washington. You just heard the new superintendent take an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Washington. That kind of is the first and foremost thing. The school district technically exists through the school board, but is an independent body. The body politic essentially is the superintendent. The board sets policy and does various things, and the board receives from the state of Washington, as well as the federal government, as well as through impact fees and local delivery systems, money to operate the school and the schools and to educate kids. We in the state of Washington have a mandated basic education requirement for attendance for kids, K through 12. You can opt out of it. You can go ahead and do ALE, you can go ahead and go to a private school if you don't like the relationship in a private school. It's more of a contractual relationship for how they deliver instruction, or you can homeschool as well. In the state of Washington, when the pandemic hit, what happened, as we all are aware, is that the government came down and basically made a bunch of decisions that they believed were in the best interests of the health and safety of everybody in both the United States to some extent, but really on local levels for the state. And a lot of people didn't agree with it, regardless of my politics on it. They went ahead and they made the decision that they made. Now, how does that impact the superintendent and the school district and you as parents and students in the state of Washington? Well, it impacts you because, first and foremost, the district has students and has a duty to supervise students. The district also, through schools, has staff that have an employment relationship. So we have L&I, we have occupational health, and those components that dictate it. And then when we have students in the hallways, there's an interrelationship and a duty to supervise and keep those students safe. Those decisions are made just by the school district, how they do that every day. They enter into labor negotiations with the unions. They establish kind of the conditions, the pay for employment, and that's what districts do and always have done. Well, when the pandemic hit, orders were handed down that talked about, first and foremost, we're going to shut down schools and we're going to make you go virtual. And that was because, in part and parcel, probably because of all the other concerns about everybody getting together and basically, spreading COVID and controlling COVID. Well, once we went ahead and went through that process, a lot of districts were left to make their own decisions. They had to negotiate what they wanted to negotiate to bring people into the school, and they also had to negotiate whether they were going to do hybrid models and everything else until the end of last year when the governor decided you're going to come back and you're going to do or offer at least a hybrid model, a certain percentage of, basically 30% was the requirement to give the option to students to come back because of the concerns over the impact. Well, one of the things that has basically impacted in-person instruction, in addition to all our lives everywhere else, and thankfully we're here in July, so yesterday things changed as a matter of enforcement throughout the state, is that we had a mask mandate. Okay, so why does the mask mandate apply in the school environment? Well, it applies in the school environment primarily because of the fact that it has been determined by the Secretary of the Department of Health in the state of Washington and local health authorities throughout the state to varying degrees of enforcement that you need to have masks to basically prevent the spread of COVID among individuals. At this point, as of today, and I want to be very clear when I say this, as of today, that mandate is still in effect when it comes to in schools where students are present. Right now, we don't know necessarily what the guidance is going to look like for the beginning of the next school year. So the 2021-2022 school year, we do not have an idea of what those mandates are going to look like. Well, why do we care about those mandates? Well, the Department of Health, Secretary of Department of Health, as well as the County Department of Health, has the ability, if there is a problem with essentially enforcing those mandates, to come in and shut down schools' in-person instruction. They've not done it, to my knowledge, in the state, because no school district has gone ahead and officially departed from it, but they have actually used it. I can tell you based on my experience, where for instance, they had an outbreak among a bunch of individuals who are participating in a sport, and the school district didn't want to necessarily test athletes. For those of you who have athletes in your family, you realize there was a variety of WIAA and other enforcement related to athletics that occurred as we started sports up at the end of this last school year. Well, part of that was an outgrowth of, for at least the enforcement purposes, they wanted to have testing because they wanted to go ahead and keep sports going, but they were worried about the sports, if they didn't do testing, because that was a congregate activity, that it was going to come into the schools and prevent that 30% delivery of instruction from happening. So they went ahead and basically said to these couple of districts that I work with, if you don't go ahead and test the athletes, if you don't go ahead and do these things, and we don't talk to the WIA about wrestling and other stuff and do that testing, we're just gonna shut you down. Which got the attention of the governor's office and the superintendent of public instruction, Reichel, because they had handed down that mandate saying, for the mental health of kids, we need to have at least 30% instruction and put kids in. The departments of health, I'll say that just generally, both the secretary of the Department of Health, as well as the Pierce County, is a health department, I don't remember what it is right now, exactly, still is Pierce County Health Department, has the ability to go ahead and bring that enforcement. It's just an extension of the authority they have. We don't really see them use that authority very often. Like, for instance, if a school has a pool and you don't have lifeguards, they could go ahead and come in and shut down the pool. They've done that before. If you had asbestos throughout a hallway, or some kid spills something chemical that's gonna hurt everybody, or a staff member or some lawyer knocks something over in the hallway, they can go ahead and come in and do that type of activity and shut a school down. It is very rare that we have the possibility of shutting down an entire district, but it is within their health authority. It is within the governor's authority under the state constitution to issue the orders he has, whether you agree with it or not. No one has successfully challenged that. It is within the authority of the Department of Health on the secretary level and the county level to go ahead and exercise the enforcement of the mask mandate. We are just along for the ride as a school district in that regard. Now, okay, so what else can happen if you go ahead and why do you have the mask mandate in place? One of those reasons is occupational, for the people that work for the school district, the employees of the school district. There are a variety of, I'm sure every administrator and the board and any school district in the state of Washington can tell you the stories they've gone through to try and negotiate the process of bringing staff back into a school for the purposes of educating kids. There's no wrong side, but it's just a process of talking about the conditions of employment. One of those involves the mask and social distancing, testing, making leave available, remote versus in person. All those things go to it. The good news is right now is that we are seeing a lessening of the requirements for next year as we go through in plants. Primarily in the area of social distancing, because we've had this, we went to 6 feet, then Inslee said we could do 3 feet, and that was actually really drawn in part because of the fact that a lot of schools couldn't put all the kids, even if they cohorted them, into a school with 6 feet. In fact, what happened when the 6 feet went to 3 feet is because a bunch of school superintendents went down and talked to Inslee and Reichel and said, there's no way we're going to have in-person schooling the 2021-2022 school year if you don't move it from 6 to 3. And it's been really hard to operationalize that because we still have areas where they say 6 feet, right? Certain locations, certain times. So at this point, that's something that they've indicated will hopefully change for the next school year. But where we are today is that guidance otherwise is still intact, and that includes mask mandates. Yesterday, a lot of things happened. There were a lot of orders that were issued, including one by the state level Secretary of Health that talked about where people could go and who has to wear masks and who doesn't have to wear masks. One of the things that was laid out in that was that if you are vaccinated, there are places that you do not need to mask up. If you go indoors, you're working in an environment, you're around other people that are also vaccinated. What they specifically said in that is, if you are around schools where students are present or are likely to be present, regardless of your vaccination status, you still have to mask up. And that's in part driven because we don't have vaccinations below age 12. And there are process of basically wearing a mask, regardless of your vaccination status, prevents basically the expectorant or the respiratory droplets or whatever term you want to use from being spread. So right now, as of yesterday, the most up-to-date order by the Secretary of Health of the state of Washington says anybody who's around a student, or any student in a school, regardless of vaccination status, needs to wear a mask. Now, that order was issued by the authority of, basically given to him as the Secretary of Health in the state of Washington. The order also said that if a regional health authority, so Pierce County Health District, comes in and says something more restrictive, then that controls. And one of the things that the state will tell you is that from county to county, some health departments have been completely heavily involved in school district decision-making and planning. Other counties, not so much. There's some counties in the state of Washington where the superintendent and the principal and everybody have weekly meetings with the doctor that runs, or doctors that run the county department of health, and that varies. I'm not here to talk about your relationship with the Pierce County Health Department, but if the Pierce County Health Department changes the guidance and the Secretary of Health for the state of Washington changes the guidance, then that will go ahead and have an impact, obviously, on what the requirements are. We are not, at least I can say this, I am not creating obligations when I'm working with school districts, and I know the superintendent in talking, or other superintendents I've worked with and other boards, we are not creating obligations that are not being delivered to us by legal mandate from other entities. This is not an agenda. School districts don't, honestly, school districts don't want to be in this situation. School districts need to be neutral and want to educate kids and just go back to work. But there are a variety of interests that are at play. So we have the health component. We also have the labor component, which is the employees of a school district, regardless of the position of anybody individually on mask, have organizations like unions, like the Washington Education Association or the PSC, or these various organizations that represent groups of employees in schools, and they have the right to talk about working conditions, and one of those working conditions is safety. And they're going to go ahead and negotiate what they think is a safe condition. Right now, all the literature is saying a safe condition is being in an environment that has either people who are vaccinated, which is a personal choice for public employees right now, and also to have related protective measures available to them, including working amongst people that are masked and students that are masked. The reason that they have that as part of the agreement when they negotiate this stuff is Labor and Industries requires it, Occupational Health requires it, and that's in addition to what the Secretary of Health and what the county health departments are telling us. So we have Labor and Industries telling us we need to do it as well. Then, kind of the third component, which is we have the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, which is Chris Reichdahl, who's, I'm sure you've seen or heard his name, but he's talking about stuff, and he's worried about how school districts run, and they go ahead and they create this guidance for us of how we're supposed to operate. Right now, we have guidance on planning for next year. That guidance, is it mandatory for school districts? They will tell you that it's up to a school district to make the decisions about what they adopt. But what I can tell you is the guidance exactly mirrors what the Secretary of Health and what the health departments are saying. They also are talking about what they think should happen for kids, and that guidance has been created with the input of a lot of people, including teachers, lawyers, custodians, bus drivers, paraeducators, principals, superintendents, board members, medical experts. And so it creates this kind of understanding of the educational community, I'll say this generally, and they've endorsed the same practice. The mask mandate, when it ends, will not end because of what an individual school district does. It will end because the governor and OSPI and the Secretary of Health go ahead and say it. That's not something that the district is involved in. I can tell you I was involved in some negotiations to try and get some districts back with in-person instruction. And one of the big things that was happening is I don't know if you read about it, there were some lawsuits that were filed by organizations representing educators that didn't want to come back to school, and they wanted a temporary restraining order, basically to say, we don't want to come back because it's not healthy. Those were all resolved because they negotiated it under those contracts. But there has not been any successful attempt that I'm aware of in the state of Washington to prevent the mask mandate being applied in a context where teachers teach and students learn. You know, we're continuing to move forward with a lot of this stuff. I can tell you right now what I think is going to happen. I think one of two things is going to happen before next year. Either we're going to go ahead and, regardless of your position on it, I'm not here to make any comment, but if the vaccination numbers are high enough, and the Secretary of Health, that's one of the things that drives specifically what he's going to decide. If they're high enough, then they'll probably see a lessening of the mandates. I don't know if that'll include masking, but we'll see things that will make it easier and have more normalcy to how schools operate. If we can go ahead and if they decide, and we aren't the people that would decide this, okay? So, I mean, they aren't the people that decide this. I mean, they realistically, the Department of Health has to come along for the ride and make the decision. But at some point, there may be some decision making about vaccinated versus unvaccinated. But right now, we aren't going near it because that's not our job. But that's not going to be a decision made particularly in school districts. Private employers, for instance, can require people to be vaccinated. School districts, no one's touching that because they don't want to get into that business. So the one thing we have as well is I think everybody, including the Secretary of Health, as well as the governor and the regional health departments, they understand that if they abandon the mask mandate in schools, that they're going to go ahead and not get it back. And I think they're really, really wary. I don't know, for those of you who've been following what's happening in LA County just came out and announced yesterday, they're asking everybody, regardless of vaccination, to mask indoor and outdoor because they're concerned about the Delta variant. Now, I can tell you right now, CDC and the World Health Organization, as well as the Secretary of Health, Fauci, all these people, they aren't agreeing with that. But I can tell you if the numbers start going up with Gamma or Delta variants, which are the ones that are highly contagious, if you will, compared to the Alpha variant, then we're probably not going to see a lessening of the mask mandate. But the school district is in a position where, honestly, and I mean generally the school district, not necessarily your district here, but what I can tell you is the school districts really pretty much are going to blow which way the Secretary of the Department of Health and the Regional Department of Health go. And they will take their, to some extent, some considerations from the governor's office, but there are things that could happen that could impact that I'm not aware of and I can't predict right now. So literally, I've been in a situation as I've worked with districts, I can tell you this, for the last year and a half, where I'm updating guidance literally almost on a daily basis because it's a moving target. Schools, districts, including yours, have done an amazing job to try and get kids back. Staff have done an amazing job to try and balance what it takes to be an instructor, both virtually as well as in person. It is literally one of the greatest, crises in education, at least that I've seen and will probably ever see in our lifetime right now. And they are trying, I can tell you that much, and they're trying to weather the storm as best they can. And unfortunately, a lot of these safety measures and personal protective measures and things that have to do with COVID, they aren't within the authority of the school district. And generally, if school districts go ahead and move forward with something that's contrary to that, then we're going to be in a situation. And as I said, I worked through the risk management or Washington Schools risk management pool. Like if somebody falls at a school or somebody gets hurt at a school, and I've been doing this, I was a prosecutor for a long time, and then I was a school attorney, that organization hires me to represent the district, and I show up and I defend the district. That's what I do when I do that type of work. Anything to do with COVID or anything to do with labor, or say that teachers come in and say, we're saying you're breaching the agreement, we're gonna file grievances because you're saying no masking or you're not social distancing, or if the Department of Health comes in and shuts the school district down, or if somebody comes in and says something to the effect of, Department of Health shuts you down, we want you to open up. Or if somebody comes in and you say, I want to sue the school district over the mask mandate. And I've had a lot of conversations like this the last year. That money to defend that case doesn't come out of any otherbody's coffers except the district's. That's something that get paid out of your general fund. That's taking books out of classrooms. That's taking things out of kids' hands. And that's just the reality of it. That's just the way it is. And there's a reason why, honestly, the teachers union and the other unions have not gotten into massive Donnybrooks in court, because they're trying to realize, I would say personally, my opinion is, they're trying to balance how those assets are used in better ways than in a distance way. And I don't know if it's something the board wants me to address further, or I can go feed my dog. So, who doesn't wear a mask?
Anything quick? Any questions from the board?
I guess I just wanted to verify one thing. I know lots of people that are probably in this room have called to OSPI, have called to the state, the governor's office, the general's office. They've called to Pierce County Health Department, and have been told the same thing, that they're giving guidance and that we're not obligated as a school board to follow their guidance. That's being repeated to even myself when I've called it as an anonymous person, that as a school board and as a local school, we are not obligated to follow any other guidance. But what we're seeing from the school board side is, if we step outside of the guidance, they'll shut us down, potentially.
I guess what I'll say, my personal opinion, I think that's an inaccurate statement. I think people that are saying what they say is local control. They say it's local control. These decisions are local control. Technically, you are the deciders for the school district. And that's a very hyper legal view of saying, because they can't tell you, hey, adopt this curriculum, do this, do that, consent agenda, swear in the new superintendent. Realistically, that's not accurate. Because it's one of those things where it's like, I tell my 13-year-old son, he's like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take the car for a spin. And I'm like, there's the keys right there. Go right ahead. Your choice. I'm not gonna get in the way of it. Now, as a parent, realistically, the minute he picks up those keys and starts walking out the door and opens the truck, well, game over, right? I'm not gonna let him get in the car and drive it. But realistically, that's a situation where, and I don't mean to be paternalistic about it, but there's a reason. OSPI has published thousands of pages of guidance that school districts have to look through and operate with. Thousands of pages of guidance that have set the stage for all the negotiations with every union, and have set the stage for how we can educate kids. The standards of how we go ahead and bring kids back and give them credit, how they're graduating, how they're participating in sports. It's not up to the school board. That's a punt, in my opinion.
So then why would we call them, or are they telling us that we?
Because they know it's unpopular. Why?
It's unpopular.
It is unpopular. And that's this is my personal opinion. This is not the adopted opinion of anybody else but me. My personal opinion is, it is, everyone is very.
It's the same as ours, though. That's what you're talking about. So if we're making phone calls and we're sending emails and never somebody's telling us, we don't have to follow it. And you are here telling us that. Who do we listen to?
Well,
So at the end of the day, it is our call as a school board if we decided we wanted to go in contrast. But then we're opening ourselves up, like you said, to the Pierce County Health Department, State Health Department, deciding that they did want to come in and enforce something. So we'd probably be okay until there was a hypothetical outbreak, and then we get shut down and we start to lose funding. Now, the funding thing's been unpopular, but the reality of it, we just came out of it came out of our budget meeting. We have a $26 million, give or take, revenue every year.
But you can also, I guess, at the point though, is you can get an unfair labor practice by every collective bargaining unit. You have the teachers say they wouldn't come to school and teach, and they would be, say if you violate the, I'm just saying, they would violate the term.
So I'm getting there. What I'm saying is, of that $26 million, $4.5 million comes from you. The rest is coming from the state that we have zero control over. All right, $4.5 million comes from the taxpayers locally. The rest of it
Okay.
No, got it. So there's $26 million total that we use to operate, and we're on a tight budget every year. All right? That comes out of your local again. So I'm not here to debate with you, but if you look at the numbers, and at the end of the day, we can, as a board, who are stewards of your tax money, decide that we want to go out there, we want to stand in contrast to what's being said, which I'll speak for myself as an elected member, because I can actually give my opinion because you can unelect me. My opinion is that I am responsible for not only your tax money, but for my children in this district and all of your children and every other child in this district and their their well-being. And if I do something that causes our tax money to go away so that our schools get shut down, guess what happens if our schools get shut down? This board no longer has a say, because what happens if we go bankrupt because we don't have money to actually provide the state required mandates to every student? The state comes in and they institute their own board. It's not the community gets to come reinstate their own board who does what they want. The state does it, and we all lose our say. You lose your local vote as to who's up here, because the state controls the school district.
The other thing too, do you want me to add, is one thing as well, is that every student is guaranteed basic education under the laws of the state of Washington. That was the McCleary lawsuit we heard about. There was a big funding issue a couple of years ago, is that if you have a failure of basic ed because the school board votes to go ahead and go against what is essentially the advice or the mandate from the Secretary of Health, such they come in and actually shut down operations. When the mandate for next year is right now, or the guidance is every school should be 5 days a week in person, then if you have a student who particularly has issues or concerns because of that, or doesn't have an academic opportunity under the Constitution of the state, which is very, very aggressive in defending the student's right to education, they could bring a lawsuit as well for basically a failure to steward consistent with the laws and the authority under the state constitution. I'm not saying that I've seen that happen, but that's one of the things we're looking at right now. We're watching in all the districts about how basically kids have been impacted by this last year being remote for such a long period of time. And so anything that gets in the way with kids coming back in person for that 5 days a week is something that I would, at least for my clients, the school districts, I would say, hey, you got to consider this as a factor and a concern.
So I would.
Stand by.
We're going to get to public comment.
Any other questions from the board up here?
Well, I do have a question. We just got done with our budget report, and our risk management or our insurance fees have gone up 25% this last year. In your opinion, how much of that is related to COVID?
I don't think any of it's related to COVID right now. I think the COVID hit's coming later on. I think that's based on what's happened. I think right now, honestly, like 25 years ago when I started representing school districts, it was cheaper to be a school district. Nowadays, because of the Public Records Act and because of a lot of the details and a lot of things, including loss, I hate to say it, but you know, my brother got hit by a pickup on a crosswalk and had his like growth plate in his leg basically destroyed. He got $35,000. You go ahead and get hit in a crosswalk right now, and you have a growth plate in your leg destroyed, and you have like you're a good athlete, active kid, you get $1 million. It's just the time value of money, and unfortunately, that increase is there are people that won't come and watch. We live in the great state of Washington, which I'm sure is not great to a lot of us, but there are no caps on what you can do when you sue someone. There's no immunities for school districts. There's school districts throughout the U.S. where you go to, you can't sue them. You can't sue them for anything. They have sovereign immunity, they call it. State of Washington, we have no caps. We have no safe harbor. We have nothing. Anybody can sue for anything. You might not win, but it's expensive. So.
And so what I hear you saying is that that our insurance could increase because of COVID in the future, but at this point.
I think it could, but I also think that a lot of COVID stuff is not even covered necessarily through your insurance because a lot of people aren't writing COVID right now. I think because they don't know what it is. L&I has been expanded, so L&I, other fees will be increasing, I think, as it relates to it. But I haven't seen, like we were all worried originally about COVID death lawsuits and things of that nature. And I think it's part because we've been pretty consistent with what the guidance has been. But we're still kind of sorting it out. I think unfortunately, I hate to say it, we're still in the middle of this thing somewhat.
So Charles, could you address the questions about vaccination clinics
that you had mentioned in your brief to us?
Well, if the school district wants to partner with someone to go ahead and do, and a lot of school districts have, or a lot of, certainly with, or other agencies, like the tribes and stuff like that have been very proactive on it. The liability, there's basically safe harbors if you have somebody else, the medical professional doing that. And so that's meant to encourage that type of behavior. Originally, the incentive planning to go ahead and say you get a Starbucks card, they kind of originally thought about that stuff and threw it out, but then now we do lotteries, so it's kind of anybody's angle on that. But it's not on the district in that area. That's one area in terms of making vaccination available or a vaccination clinic on district facilities. The only thing I'm telling clients is honestly, don't be the person. I'm not going to go, hey, guess what? We got some CTE kids. We're going to train them up. They're going to deliver the vaccines. It's a great experience. No. I want a medical professional, someone with a license is doing that stuff.
Anything else from the board? Yes, Matt, anything?
I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, very good.
Can I elaborate on one more statement? Here it says that if we were to disregard face covering mandates, we could be in a potential situation of civil and or criminal penalties.
There's like generally, we haven't heard it. It's been postured a couple of places, but technically under the governor's orders, under a lot of like the stay home and everything else and some of this stuff, he has criminal authority. He does. He hasn't exercised it. What's basically happened, I'll tell you, with schools is where somebody's going ahead, and primarily it's happened a lot with sports, with outbreaks because of some of the clusters of kids in sports, where when it started to get in the way of, and it was partially possibly going to bleed into some schools. My understanding is that the governor's office is pretty in tune with that and will come in and basically say, hey, let's deal with it. Or the Department of Health. Probably the most important relationship, I would say, just in terms of navigating the pandemic for a school district, is talking to the health authority. Because I'm not aware of any school district that has an infectious disease expert on staff, nor would you, so.
Yes, we do.
So
I know a lot of board members, doctors, so that's.
I guess my last thing, my last question here is, what is our legal responsibility as an enforcement arm? Because, as a school board and a school district, it's not our business or our job to truly enforce laws. We have an entire enforcement mechanism in our system of government. And at what point is it our job to enforce?
I would say, in terms of the specific enforcement, I think that ultimately it comes down to is the school district has an obligation under state law to supervise staff in a safe working environment. They have a duty to supervise students in a safe working environment and protect students from foreseeable harm. And foreseeable harm is dictated by what's out there, and you have all this stuff saying there's issues related to COVID. And then the other part of it is, like you said earlier, the stewardship of public funds. So it's not, you aren't doing things beyond your fiat or mandate, but you're very much
So
your
we can
responsibility.
ask, but not force, kind of. I mean, because we're seeing this with businesses too, that weren't forcing their customers or physically expelling customers, now having massive fines levied against them. And, at some point, I'm not putting you as, on the spot with any of this, but I think I'm speaking on the frustration of a lot of people here, seeing that, small business owners, now school districts, are kind of being utilized as an enforcement arm under guise of, coercion, a threat of losing funding and other things, that we're kind of being put into a spot between, the people that elected us to this board and the state government that's really making the calls and forcing us to be a rubber stamp for them. I use that rubber stamp thing a lot, but it puts all of us in a hard spot where we don't necessarily agree with what's being said, but we are responsible for public funds. We're responsible for education. We're responsible for following the Constitution of the state, and we're also stuck.
Well, and I think
not able to do what we're elected to do.
it's a good point, but the thing is that the money, like you talked about, the federal money that comes to the state that flows to the district comes with requirements. The state money comes with requirements. And the legislature can set some of those requirements, but OSPI can through regulation set that. we're talking about something that we never contemplated, which is obviously the health requirements and the environment, if you will, and the safety of the environment. So it's one of those things that's certainly unlike anything we've ever experienced before. I think the other part of it that's difficult to go ahead is that we're used to the way schools have been run, and the operationalizing all this guidance is just a pain in the ass. I mean, pardon my French, but it really is one of those things. I mean, it's like, it's easy to say wearing a mask on a plane, and then you sit on a plane for 3 hours, and you're like, my ears are on fire back here, and I was like, eating peanuts and stuff. I mean, it's just difficult to go ahead and put it in action, and it's really difficult for schools. I mean, I don't know of anybody who's happy about this at any level in the school district, I can tell you that.
And to put it in context, since we've been in this meeting, we've received an update changing guidance in an email. So since we've been in this meeting, that's how frequent it's changing, coming to us.
Jeff, so I think it's important to note that OSPI governs the schools, and we have had to submit multiple plans, both last summer, had them signed off by our board. We just submitted for OSPI, they had to be accepted in order to open up schools for 21-22.
Right.
So as the superintendent and my staff, we have all of these requirements, and we have to check assurances that we have done X, Y, and Z.
That's why this local control thing is just frustrating.
Yeah.
And
And
it's one of
so
those things
it
where
was accepted, which is
Yeah,
good,
but
but it's just one more layer of requirements, and we have to abide by the requirements that are listed in the DOH and the CDC guidelines and the state of Washington.
Yep.
So if we didn't fill that out, I don't know what that would mean, correct? And that would be irresponsible on my part as a superintendent.
well, yeah, he took the oath, you take the oath. I mean, it's
Right.
very difficult. It's a very difficult situation.
Thank you.
So,
Anything else from the board?
anything else?
Paula? Okay.
Cool.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Leach.
All right.
Do you mind if we ask a couple questions for 10
That's
minutes?
fine, but I'm not responsible for the structure of the government, so I'm sorry about that. Despite what my brother tells me,
Yeah. So,
in barbecues. So
okay. So,
I'm glad to go ahead and take questions, but I reserve the right to say I have no idea. Anybody want to ask me a question?
everybody's back in school tonight, so let's please raise our hand. And Mr. Leach, you want to call on people, or I can call on
I'm
people?
not,
whatever you
somebody
like?
else do it, I don't want
Okay, yellow shirt there, go ahead.
So you've done a great job explaining, like, put away your pitchfork, the school board can't make the change.
to keep your picture.
But I think for me, as I listen to it, the frustration is, we would like, well, I don't know who all
You can use the royal.
Teachers, I guess. How do we move forward to express our frustrations? I get where the roadblocks are. I guess my concern is I'm not hearing any potential for resolution for our concerns. It's just all the roadblocks for what we are not able to do here. So do you have any recommendations, like?
I would concentrate on honestly, the Secretary of Health on the state level, the science, I mean, that's the stuff. I mean, one thing is, I don't want to plug vaccination or, be smart and the other things you're doing, but, just try and be smart. I mean, it's difficult to go ahead and live your life in a time of COVID and personal protective expectations. But when I talk to clients and they say, can I do this or can I not do it? My big thing is, honestly, my hierarchy is, okay, you got to talk to your regional health department and get them to say, it's okay, I'm not reading the guide. Well, the guidance says this, but I'm not going to take it because I'm like, instead of having to send you an email saying it's okay, because I don't want them to, I talked to one person there and they changed their mind. I think the State Department of Health, those are the people that really go with it. And then honestly, you got to bring the people that work with the kids in, and then obviously parents, or everyone's allowed to, my kid, I'm allowed to have just as strong an opinion as anybody else in my school district about the safety of my kid. And it's not the loudest voice. Everybody has an equal right to go to school and be safe. And your interpretation of what's safe and your interpretation and my interpretation and her interpretation and his interpretation, they can all be different. But it's up to the school district to try and reconcile that. You know, school districts get sued by people who've been legitimately wrong, and school districts get sued by people that are just, I don't know where they're coming from. And that's just stuff just still costs money. So, but I think I go with the health people. I go with those people because they're the ones that signed all the orders that came down yesterday, L&I orders and everything else, DOSH orders. They all flow from the scientific agencies, I'll call them, the medical agencies. But that's where I concentrate on.
Very good. Right there.
What I guess the question asking for is a little bit more specific. Because we've all been doing that. We've all been making phone calls. We've all been sending files. We've talking. We've all been talking to each other. We're asking now at this point, in front of the board, in front of the superintendent, in front of everybody, who are we supposed to talk to them? We've called GM, we've done all of those things. What the other things say is that we get back, where we told one thing, so then we follow that rabbit trail, and then we find out that it's not, so then we follow another rabbit trail. But all of us are here now trying to ask, whose name do I write down and whose phone number do I call? Whose email do I call? That we actually get listened to, because collectively it's not happening. So showing up in Olympia or showing up at our mayor's office, or like, who is it then that we need to talk to? That's what we're asking. So as the attorney, who do I call?
Okay, well, I'm not the attorney for.
Well, you're the representation of whom?
No,
So
well, hey, let's, first of all, I have a question, I'll respond to it. I represent.
You already explained that.
Oh, I hear.
You've already explained that. We know who you are. You're standing in front of us, so
No,
we are
no,
asking the
okay,
question.
no, I got it. I'll field this one. So we're getting the wonderful runaround at every level, because I'm getting the same one, all right? There's a wonderful thing happening in the state ever since the emergency mandate came out, where everyone points fingers. I'll take off my school board hat and say that I personally tried to challenge said mandates, and what did they do? There was a fence around the Capitol. So there is, from my point of view, and I'm speaking for the whole board, I'm speaking for me, there is an intentional deflection of responsibility. And I can tell you from sitting here, as somebody looking for the same answers as you, I'm frustrated too. And I am trying to find the same answers you are. And I'm so frustrated with it that I applied to and was just accepted to law school so I can try to figure it out myself. So. And I'm already on the medical side of the house with an infectious disease background, wanting to figure out some answers, because what we're being told and what's happening to me does not make perfect sense. However, we have a system of government that's set into place to where right now, everybody's just kind of doing this, and you're all frustrated, we're frustrated too, and we're seeing board meetings get a little rowdier. This is actually pretty awesome, because it's nice to see our community here actually giving us input. So we actually, as a board, enjoy this. But I think that we have a shared frustration. And as a board, I can say that as a member here, I think I can speak for everybody on this one. We would like to get to the bottom of who can make decisions and hear your frustrations, who can make actual decisions. We would like to help navigate that process with you. So.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
There is not a superintendent in the state that has spent more face-to-face time with Dr. Chen than our own Preston Barr. I tell you, he has worked hard and relentlessly. I personally have been face-to-face many times with the health department. Each of our board members here have written letters, and he's saying, talk to the health department. They really are the ones that put the screws to us. And we are constantly, I think more than almost any other district in this state, we are advocating for our children. And when Matt says we're frustrated, any other district in this state, we are advocating for our children. And when Matt says we're frustrated, that is a very nice way to put it. And I can tell you that we have been nonstop working on this. I hope that you guys understand that we really are under the dictates of the Secretary of Health and Dr. Chen. So if you want to start sending Dr. Chen, send it to him. There's the name, Dr. Chen, Pierce County Health Department, Department of Health.
Yeah.
That's who we've been trying to communicate, but he doesn't listen to us either.
So we're out of traction. Okay, this board, this school district, no school has done more to fight this And we're out of traction. We've been talking to them so much for so long and not always nice conversations. I mean, we're mad. If we could get all you people that showed up here, I mean, the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, the Department of Health, the Washington State Board of Health, you've got Department of L&I. If we can get people like you to show up at their meetings, they all have boards, they all have meetings just like this, and they need to hear from you folks, because they're not listening to us
And
anymore.
I'll go with you.
Yeah?
I mean,
So, way in the corner there.
First frustration is, the last school board meeting, we could hear you, but we couldn't see you. Now we can see you, but we can't hear you.
Oh.
We're working hard to teaching our kids, we need to hear what we're saying. My other frustration is all I've heard is we're scared of the Department of Health. We're scared of the State Department of Health. We're scared of COVID. We're scared of the unions. We're scared of the teachers. We're scared of the staffers. I've heard very little about the kids. We're masking up. What is one? We're not gonna shut down a school. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could.
That's exactly what I said in April of 2020. They're not gonna shut down
They're
schools.
not gonna shut down a
There's
school.
no way. Every school, yeah.
Liabilities involved
Okay.
in that. That is insane.
Yeah.
We're gonna quit being scared. This is Eatonville. I've lived here almost 50 years. When we were kids, there was nothing but paint or log truck rolling. We went through a remodel, and the biggest problem with the remodel was putting all of us in the gym and making classrooms out of it. They worried about the kids, whether we were gonna be able to learn, whether we would just mess around.
Okay, we got time for one more question. Mr. Model?
Okay, so with all this look at different school districts and how everybody's negotiating to get kids back in class within our own state, has there been any outreach to some of the states that are open and what their districts are doing, like in Texas or Florida or wherever that's open, to like Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, those states? I know they're a different political demographic than what our state is, but yet they're still school districts. They still have different, they still have metrics that we venture up with. They still have to follow the CDC guidelines, right? So I'm just kind of curious, has there been any outreach to some of those places from your?
Not from my perspective. I mean, I think it's one of those things where the universe of the structure of the state is what they pretty much do is cede local control. I know there are people who've been talking to other states about how they've been kind of dealing with it, but I don't know what form that's taken. For at least in my experience, I don't have any understanding of it. There were a lot of people, there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen when we were trying to figure this out, just here in the state. So I think, and they were under a timeline. So that's a good question.
Okay, that's going to wrap up Q&A. We're going to have time to get to comments here. So thank you, Mr. Lakes, for coming out. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we had staff who apparently with people unsure they could come in and all that. So anybody that does want to speak, please sign up here in the sheet Mr. Silver has. So if you want to speak, please raise your hand. We can get that sheet to you, and we'll get it on that one. So we're going to go ahead and start. Mr. Cole?
Wait, before we start, President, would you be willing to give the community kind of the guidelines around public comment so that everybody's kind of familiar with the protocols?
So we're going to give you 3 minutes to speak, to address the board. It's really for you to make comments. It's not so much a question and answer thing. And we just want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and add to our base of knowledge as we figure this out.
pneumonia, tuberculosis, meningitis, amoebic encephalitis, diphtheria, Legionnaire's disease. These are just a few of the pathogens found on children's masks after wearing them an average of 5.7 hours in a small yet eye-opening study in Gainesville, Florida. You will notice SARS-CoV-2 is not on that list. As a matter of fact, only a single virus on one mask was found, and that was herpes virus 1. While this recent study was small, it was also eye-opening. It opened my eyes and the eyes of many that we are surrounded and come into contact every day with potentially harmful pathogens, which are almost overwhelmingly fought off due to our immune system. It is also eye-opening to see that only a single virus was found present on a single mask and was not COVID. In my eyes, this study showed on average children have a very robust immune system, while also showing a mask did nothing to harness or stop viral particles. The last assumption is backed up by years of clinical data and studies. I don't have time to get into all of them, but there is overwhelming documented peer-reviewed controlled trials in operating rooms that shows masks make zero significant difference in the spread of viruses. If they make no difference in a tightly controlled environment like an operating room, how much of a difference do you feel like they make in everyday life, especially amongst children? I came and spoke to this very group on May 26th and asked a simple question. Where is your line? Have you found it? Everybody I'm speaking to tonight has kids or has recently had kids or grandkids in our schools. Can you sit here and look us all in the eyes and with a straight face and tell us you are okay with the continued masking of our children, the continued social distancing of our children, the continued pressure to vax our children, and the continued mental and physical abuse of our children? Where do you draw the line and stand with your constituents and say, unmask our kids and put an end to this madness? RCW 425630 states, the people of this state do not yield the sovereignty to the agencies that serve them. The people in delegated authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may maintain control over the instruments they have created. This chapter shall be liberally construed to promote this public policy and to assure the public interest will be fully protected. This is just one of several unlawful violations perpetrated against our children. Current guidance. I have an entire legal brief if you'd like to review it. Now, I know what we said. Mr. Pohl, you are pleading your case to the wrong people. You need to speak to DOH, LNI, etc. Again, I say no. I am speaking to the correct group. The elected representatives of this school district and the elected representatives who have been elected to given the authority to be the ultimate overseers and decision makers for our district. Many, including myself, have reached out to all of the various state agencies and got the same answers from all of them. We only provide guidance. So which is it, guidance or mandate? RCW 28A 150-230 states, it is the intent and purpose of this section to guarantee that each common school district board of directors, whether or not acting through its respective administrative staff, be held accountable for the proper operation of their district to the local community and its electorate. Do you feel forcing children to mask up 6 to 8 hours per day, subjecting their bodies and mental psyche to mandatory daily well checks, social distancing from their peers, and being made to feel like a leper for not getting an unapproved shot is proper operation?
15 seconds, Brad.
I'll go as fast as I can. Do you feel like you and the district are living up to the standards of RCW 425630? We, the people, do not yield our sovereignty to the agencies that serve them. Do you feel the district is living up to RCW 496030, which in short states the right to be free from discrimination because of race, creed, color, national origin, citizenship, immigration status, sex, military status, sexual orientation, or disability? What is creed? Creed is a set of beliefs which aims and guides a person's actions. Creed is generally used in religious terms, but can be any set of beliefs. Like I said to you a month and 5 days ago, my intent and the intent of those gathered here tonight is not to fight against you, but to work with you to make tough decisions. We want to be the army behind you that makes you feel confident to be the leaders we elected. But please do not mistake these words for weakness. We expect you to have only two things in mind when deciding the direction of our district: the impact, good or bad, of our children, and the impact, good or bad, of your electorate and the taxpayers you represent.
All right. Thank you, Brad.
I'm not done.
We'll
Those two
talk
things
about
should
it.
always be the guiding light in decision-making. I could speak on this topic for hours, but realize I'm already over my time allotment, and it's prudent to give others time. In closing, today our governor announced full reopening of Washington. Restrictions may apply. This is evidence that the emergency is over, yet his reopening did not include schools. Why is that? I know you and many other districts are in a holding pattern waiting to see if guidance changes for schools next year. But please ask yourself this: what if it does not change? What then? Will we be having this conversation in August? What if any new guidance further harms or segregates our children? Will you force parents' hands to pull their kids from school? Will you allow this to happen on your watch? Or will you stand with us right now and declare our children no longer to be discriminated against based on their creed, will no longer have their personal sovereignty abridged by unelected governmental agencies, and will finally, after 16 months, have their bodily autonomy back? The choice is yours. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but rather an action in the face of it.
How's it going, everybody? My name's Cole Stover. I personally do not have any children in the school district, but I have a girlfriend that has a couple. I have family that has kids in here, all of you. So I want to be a voice for the people. I want to be an example to step up for people who don't think that they have the right to step up on this. Me personally, through the last year, I've heard about grades dwindling. I've heard about children going into classrooms without their masks and going into complete fits, bawling their eyes out, thinking that they're going to kill somebody. I've heard about depression and all sorts of other horrible stuff that children should not be subjected to. So I want to be a voice for you guys, and I have a letter written by a family friend, Nikki Wise, that was not able to come here tonight, but she wanted me to share this with you. Our children and our rights are protected under the U.S. Constitution, the highest law of the land. No law is valid or lawful that violates that Constitution. No health order or emergency order and or state of emergency may suspend or violate the Constitution, period. You, the school board, are representatives of the parents, and you have a responsibility to do what is right, to protect the children in your school, to honor the right of the parents, and to abide by the Washington state law and the state constitution that empowers individuals and not the state agencies. That serves them. And it is time to remove the unlawful and harmful mask mandates, social distancing, COVID testing / temperature taking, and or of course experimental gene therapy injections known as COVID-19 vaccination. Certain laws show that the governor, the Secretary of Health, the Department of Health, and L&I are operating outside of the law. And by continuing to follow their direction, you are too. You should abide by the oath of office that you took and uphold the United States and the Washington State Constitution. Put our children first. Misrepresenting the mask for using as an infection prevention or reduction is a deceptive practice under the FTC. Requiring children to wear a mask, you are promoting the idea that the mask can prevent or treat a disease and or virus, which is an illegal deceptive practice. It is unlawful to advertise that a product or a service can prevent a virus or disease unless you have reliable scientific evidence. No emergency order supersedes established law. Any health order related to the mask wearing is unlawful and unenforceable by law. Each and every one of you can be held personally responsible if you do not comply with federal law. So pretty much like the lawyer was saying earlier, it sounded like that we aren't the people, that we aren't in charge. He made it in his little metaphor, make it look like we were the kids stealing the car. That's false. the government is, because they have to go by us, we the people. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phil.
Hello, I'm Peter Carlin, and I realize I bring a little different perspective to this conversation. So I just want to start out by saying one thing. I think that's gotten lost in this whole thing as it's become politicized is, regardless of where we stand on this issue, all of us, I think, want a few things for our families, right? We all want our families to be safe. We want to send our kids to school. We want them to be in school to learn in that environment, right? And we want our small businesses to be open, right? None of us enjoy this last year and a half that we've kind of suffered through, right? So I'm a family medicine doctor at our clinic in town, and so I have a very different perspective than a lot of what's been shared so far. I worry a lot about COVID. I've been dealing with it every day at work, when I come home, trying to keep my family safe. You know, since April of last year in our clinic, we all wear masks all day long. We take them off to eat lunch, but we have survived. We haven't had anyone get sick at clinic. We've been testing people early on at the onset of the pandemic. We've been testing people before we had vaccines. So we've been at a little higher risk than some people, right? And so it's something I worry a lot about, and I have my routine. When I come home, I take off my stuff on the patio and I get in the shower, and we did this for many months. And then I got vaccinated, and I feel much safer now, but it's still a daily struggle for us at our clinic. But I just want to remind people that that we may have different views, you know, where you land on this issue, but I think we do share some really common core values. And I'm from Eatonville. I grew up in Eatonville. I'm, you know, I identify with this town. I grew up here, and I love living here. I have 4 kids. 2 of them are at Weyerhaeuser, and since the onset of the pandemic, we've worked with you guys to try to help keep our kids safe and to try to get them back in school. It surprised me a little bit, Jeff, what you said about how our relationship with the health department, that's not something I witnessed. Obviously, you guys have those conversations, but my experience working with you guys and working with our school nurse and Preston is that you guys were able to balance all these really difficult issues very well, right? We all wanted our kids to be in school, but we want our kids to be safe. And you guys worked really hard to get our kids back. You know, you were a leader among a lot of school districts in this state getting our kids back. And I know, having 4 kids, 2 of them being able to go back to school, how valuable that was, right? But you also took COVID seriously, and you took these things that you have no control over. You took it. You basically had to comply with those things, right? And you were able to do it, and we were able to get our kids back. So I'm grateful for that, and I think I certainly hope going into the next year that you guys continue to take this health issue seriously, because if we don't follow the science, right? We don't follow the guidance that we're getting from experts. I'm a family medicine doctor. I'm not an expert in infectious disease, epidemiology. We have to rely on people that do this for a living, our public health experts that truly have the expertise to guide us through this really difficult time. So of course we have to, like you guys said, we can give our input, but ultimately what I'm hearing tonight, it sounds like the science and what the state determines is safe is what's gonna drive how things look in the fall when our kids return to school. So I just wanna make sure that you guys are aware too, there's a lot of people that maybe aren't here that probably share my perspective and that would be very nervous if we went back to school and there was no, no masking or no consideration for these safety measures that have been taken to this point. So I just want to thank you guys too. I know this has been a tough year for everybody, and probably more so for all of you guys and what you've had to do. as public figures and leaders in our community. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Lydia Collins.
Hi, my name is Lydia Collins, and I wasn't planning on getting up to speak today, but I had a question based on something I heard council say earlier. As a nursing student, soon to be ICU nurse, I never denied the reality or severity of COVID. I've seen it over and over again over my last year of clinicals. What I haven't seen is children with it, and you don't need to be a medical professional to know the statistics. Children aren't getting this in any significant amounts. What I have seen is a huge spike in adolescent depression, anxiety, and mental disorders of many kinds generated by the isolation of the last year. I understand you're in a very difficult place to be, and I don't want to downplay that. But my question is, council said earlier that school admins were able to change the 6-foot distancing to 3-foot distancing by banding together and going to the governor. What is preventing the school admins of Pierce County from coming together to form a coalition of sorts to challenge the current regulations and change them? Thank you.
Jeanette Carpenter.
Hi, I'm Jeanette. I'm a little nervous, sorry. I am in the restaurant. What? I'm in the restaurant business, and I've been in there for the last 28 years of my life. This last year was very hard for all of us. We were running around to tables, trying to get everything everybody needs with a mask on. I can only imagine how our kids feel. They're trying to play, have fun, with their own people. And the mask is just too much. I deal with it 5 hours a day, running to tables. It's horrible. I had to come in and take it off and take a deep breath. I've had coworkers that still got COVID, even wearing a mask. I don't understand if you want to wear a mask, that's fine. But the kids that don't want to wear a mask and the parents that are okay with it, I don't think they should have to. I don't think, how are these athletes trying to breathe and get what they need to get done? It's not fair. It covers their whole face. You can't see their smile. I have tables come to me and say, hey, take your mask down. I want to see your smile. We're all behind a mask, and it's disgusting, honestly. It really is. I understand that you don't and you can't do what you need to do, I don't know, but I hope that you put some information out there so we know when the next meeting is at a health department. Actually, I have the health department come in all the time. I can ask them. They're in all the time. I'm just over it. I pulled my kid out of school. I just homeschooled last year, and I do want to say, it always says, my teacher wouldn't say that, but I said, I'm your mom, I can. Anyways, one positive thing I want to say about the masks, because I pulled my kid out, is when I got him home, him being a 7th grader, he couldn't write a complete sentence. Now he's writing poetry, all of his apostrophe, everything, he is doing brilliant. So everything happens for a reason. So let's keep at it and get these masks off the kids. I don't care if you want to wear them, that's fine. And another thing, I'm a health major myself. Why aren't we talking about vitamins we can take? What happened to D3, vitamin C, zinc? We're all talking about covering up. Let's put something healthy in our bodies to fight whatever is out there. Thank you.
Thank you. It's all yours. Yes. Oh, sorry.
All right, I'll be brief, I promise, no more than 2 minutes. Good evening, I'm Sammy Jo 30acre. My 5 children have either graduated from or attended school here in the Eatonville School District. I was also on the school board in 2019. I'm here because each of you were elected by the people of Eatonville School District, and as such, we want you to put the health and safety of our children first, and then a strong, rigorous academic and skills-related education to prepare our kids for life after high school. First, I want you to declare that masks and vaccines are optional. I heard the legal thing, but I wrote this before I heard the legal thing. Anyway, our children are the least likely to contract COVID-19, and they are the least likely to die from it. They're the safest demographic of all for this virus, and we need to honor that. These masks are physically harmful to their health, and it is mentally damaging as well. Anyone can do the research. It's all out there for us to review. Secondly, we vehemently oppose the teaching and or preaching of the critical race theory or cultural diversity equity. Which I know is a mandatory training that you guys have already been going through because it was on that budget letter that you had to sign. We are against that teaching for our children. This is a racist teaching that some people are oppressors and others are the oppressed, and it's all based upon the amount of melanin in their skin, something that none of them has any control over or any choice about. This ideology devalues people. It divides people. And worse, if there can be a worse, it destroys their hope for the future. They're being told that the color of their skin is now the definition of who they are, and that it is more important than the content of their character, which is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lost his life fighting for. We fought this ideology in the 60s, so why are we replaying it again? We need to stop it. Third, we want you to get back to the basics of teaching principles and tools to prepare our children for the future after high school, whether it's the workforce, college, the military, building up their own business, attending a trade school. I don't care. Whatever it is that they dream to do or dream to become, they need to believe that they can do it or be it, anything they desire, if they work hard, and that it has absolutely nothing to do with the color of their skin. Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of public speaking. You guys haven't signed up. There, hang on.
So I wrote this letter to you guys at the last board meeting. I'm not sure if it was read or not, but I wanted all of you guys to hear it. Let me find it real quick. Half of my sophomore year was taken from me, and now school is almost up for the summer. I am about to be a senior in high school. Technically, I guess I am a senior already. It's almost 2 years of my high school life dominated and regulated with masks and keeping distance from my friends. That is no way for the kids of this community to live. We thrive off of social interaction with our friends. We love playing sports without a piece of cloth over our face. We want to sit next to each other at lunch without getting yelled at that we're too close. As a 16-year-old student, I see this. I see that this isn't normal. I see that other states are allowing our kids just like me to go to school without a mask, to go to school and have lunch with friends, to go to school and not hate every single second of it. We are teaching the future of our children to wear a mask because if you don't, you will be punished for it. Children are not at risk at all when it comes to COVID, and neither are people under the age of 85. Nearly 50% of the COVID deaths were nursing home residents. All life is filled with danger of contracting a disease. That is the human condition. There is no such thing as totally safe school or place of business. Any life worth living cannot be lived without some risk. This is from an article that wouldn't be shown on the news or shared around the world. Why? Simply because the chaos and fear of the American people gets more publicity. Yet we locked down for COVID-19, doing damage we have not even assessed yet, wiping out small businesses, destroying people's dreams, and causing immense economic harm. We have isolated ourselves from the world, from our families, and from our friends. As a student in the Eatonville School District, I'm about to be a senior. This is my last year of high school and the last year of my youth. The last year that my parents get to see me as a kid. We're all growing up and life flies by quick. We only get one 8th grade graduation. We only get to turn 16 once. I just want all of you to put yourselves in our shoes to try and understand what it feels like to see other kids in other states live completely normal lives. Try to understand how we feel wearing a mask while we exert ourselves playing sports. Think about how much our lives have changed for the worse and how unhappy we are. You say that you'll fight for us, but we don't see any of it. We see rules being followed. We see you following the rules even if it means ruining our lives. We're giving up because the only opinion that matters does not involve those of this community. Thank you.
Okay, superintendent comments. Last chance, Kristen.
Well, I would like to thank the community for 8 wonderful years. This has been the hardest year and a half. And I just want to thank. Take off. You're too pretty to wear one. Oh. All right. I'll stand in here so you can hear. Just 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Cut me off. So Eatonville community, we have been Eatonville strong tonight. We're Eatonville strong. And students are here. We will make it through this. I have been here for 8 years. We have changed a lot. We have had kindergarten, preschool, GRITS program, innovative, green schools, STEM schools, and amazing graduates over the last 8 years. So please, 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 as I leave, please don't forget that. This is an amazing community. I heard that time and time again. This pandemic will end. This will be a bad kind of those years. And this is a wonderful, wonderful school district. I have been honored and so privileged. Thank you for growing me into a superintendent. I didn't know what I was doing when I came here, and I have learned so much and been so blessed by knowing so many of you, especially the students. I really want to thank the students for being kind and compassionate. They are amazing, amazing kids here, and it's because you're amazing parents. So thank you. I know this has been a hard night. It's been a hard few years, but I just am so grateful as I leave here and go to another community for having been part of the Eatonville. So thank you.
So, Mr. Neal, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. Let's give you your first superintendent comments.
Okay. Well, I would just kind of like to echo.
Wait.
That's probably his last.
Can you see us?
I can't see anybody. I can see myself.
Okay, if I break this, I'm leaving tomorrow.
No. Oh, he's on this one.
Oh, wait, gone. Come on, Jakku. Oh, there he is. Oh.
No.
No problems.
Can you still talk, Gary? No, Kristen killed it. All right. Then we'll go to board comments. Until Drew might get that back.
What did you let him?
Yeah. All right. Anybody have any comments? What's that? Oh, there he is. Okay. Are you back, Gary?
Maybe not.
Say something, Gary.
Hello?
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, it's all you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I was just, I don't have prepared comments here, but I would like to congratulate Superintendent Barr and Director Knight. They've really done exemplary work in Eatonville. And, you know, they've built a sturdy scaffolding for Eatonville. And I intend to keep building and adding to that scaffolding so that our kids can continue to grow and have the best possible education that they all deserve. I wish I was there tonight. I was, you know, obviously there was a lot of energy in the room. I would love to have been a part of that, but I'm not. But you know, I also look forward to watching Preston and Kim as they continue doing wonderful things for their respective districts that they're going to. And I've only been able to meet with them for a short period of time and the school board, but I want to thank everyone for their tireless efforts and for everything they have done for the kids of Eatonville. And the bar is way up there, and I'm gonna go as high as I can to try to make sure that I continue this work and continue everything that's been done in this wonderful community that I'm so excited to be part of. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, board comments, that big word.
You want it? I'll grab it for you.
Yeah.
Sure.
If it'll go. Make sure I don't.
She said it right out there.
I wanted to, first of all, thank Kim Knight for the great work she's done on the budget. And thank you, Superintendent Barr, for the great work that you've done on behalf of students. Students are first in all of our hearts, particularly yours, so thank you very much. I also wanted to thank Taylor, our last speaker, is one of our new student representatives, and I think it's excellent that she has the courage and fortitude to come forward and share her voice. And student voice is very, very important and impactful to each of us. I can speak on behalf of everybody on this board. I am so grateful for the attendance here tonight. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing your stories and your passion. We, each of us, hear you, and we are continuing to do the important work that we can throughout the summer. I can tell you that I've been on hours and hours and hours of meetings, and while you are doing what the people can do, you're using your collective voice, we are also attempting to do everything we can do as elected officials to continue to move the work forward and making sure that we keep student and staff safety and fiscal responsibility at the forefront, as well as listening and communicating with our community. So thank you all for the time you can. We invite you back to every board meeting. We would love to have this kind of feedback from our community at all times. So thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to take kind of a side trip here, but it is still, it's all about education. And, you know, we have the privilege as a school board to have student reps on our board every year. And they do just so much to helping keep us informed and encouraging us and giving us information. And they attend state conferences and things that can help them to grow, as well as all of us by hearing it through students' voices and through their views on it. And so I think all of them are here tonight, and if you would stand when I say your name, so we can recognize you as our student reps for the 2021-22 school year. Taylor Limburg. Jason Campbell. And I hope I say this right. Jason Orsiak. Taylor, I'm sorry, Taylor. Apologize. All right. Thank you all so much for, you students for stepping up. It's adding to your responsibilities as students And it's a different type of leadership position, and we're looking forward to spending the time with you. Thank you.
I want to echo everything that my colleagues here have said. Thank you all for coming out. We're very proud of the school district for all of the students that are in this district, and we love the voice that Eatonville has collectively. So thank you all for coming out. This has been good to hear from you. We want to continue to hear from you. All of us have had a unexpected and unpredictable couple of years. I can tell you that when I ran for this position, I could never have even imagined what it would have been like shortly after I was elected to the seat. And it affected my family greatly too, as I had a daughter who refused to walk in her own high school graduation just across the road here, over in the field. Which I can tell you hurt my wife quite a bit, not getting to get those photos, but you know, all of us have suffered in one way or another. If I wasn't on this board, I can tell you that my own children may be homeschooled right now. It's frustrating for all of us, and I want you to know that your frustrations are being heard by everybody up here, and we are listening to you. And every email, even the one that I haven't responded to yet, because I have a long draft that I haven't sent, is read and is thought about. And I know that I respond to every email that I get. I believe that everybody else on this board does as well. So we do hear you, and I just want you all to know that we all hear you, and we appreciate your input. And we are trying our best to represent you in the best way that we can. So thank you all for coming.
So I will echo what everybody else has had to say already. Preston, thank you for a tremendous 8 years. This is a lot different school district than it was when you came here. Kim, you as well. You have done an amazing job and taught us more about money than we ever thought we needed to know. So thank you both for a lot of work. Thank you everybody here for coming out tonight. Hearing from the people is the most important thing. And more than just a school board, like I said, there's lots of agencies involved in this, and they need to hear too. This board has worked really hard for a year and a half, and we have affected some changes. And we're not going to stop trying to make changes. And the one thing I am absolutely certain of is that before next school year starts, there's going to be many more changes. I mean, as Matt pointed out, we've already had a change during this meeting tonight. So this is, it's crazy times. But don't think we don't care. I mean, most of us grew up in this town. I grew up in this town. I went to school in this building. My kids are going to school in this building. You know, we understand what's going on, and we're working as best we can. So I know, you know, we don't have a lot of great answers for everybody, but we appreciate you coming out and talking to us. Don't stop. Talk to everybody that'll listen to you. And that being said, anybody have anything else to say? All right, let's call it a night. Let's adjourn this meeting at 8:40. I don't want to break.
Thank you for having me. Yes, you too. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
All together.
Okay,